We have a reputation to protect here, and I want you to know that I take it very seriously. I know some people think it's a joke and kind of a goof, but it's not. It's hard to come up with new ways to screw things up, and or at the very least, new ways for. I don't want to say I've screwed things up in a new way every single time we've done this, but certainly every single time we've done this, I've been surprised by some way it was screwed up. So I think that's the spirit of the thing. So anyway, here we are, just me and 50 of my closest friends, uh, talking about what's going on in the world and soaking up the freedom. So anyway, it's good to be here. Hi everybody. Let's see, a couple little things. First of all, I just love that Weird Al song. I just love it. I'm not a huge Weird Al fan, but I really like that song, and I heard it on the way in, and I thought I need to run that definitely. You know, a lot of times this is a lot of back in the good old days on this show. It's kind of a nostalgia trip for all of us, I guess. But I was listening to we were, by the way, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I know I'm sorry about that big mystery, but if you get to see the show live, we get to play some music, some really different kind of music before we go on the air and record it, and love to play it on the YouTube version, but then we get flagged and all the rest of it. But anyway, we get to play some fun stuff before we go on live here. And today we were playing Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota, Weird Al Yankovic ballad, which sounds an awful lot like the record, the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I have to tell you, I know Weird Al is kidding, and I'm kind of kidding, but I really think that song is just great. There's just so much in there, and as I was saying, this is kind of a nostalgia trip. But many times when I say this, it's not like, oh, you kids today, with your Ubers everywhere and stuff. It's not so much that that I resent the Uber thing. Uber's awesome, or whatever you're using to get around. It's these electric scooters now here in LA. But whatever you're using is great. I actually just regret. I think I feel sorry for people that didn't have the road trip experience, and they never will. They never will. And when I say they never will, what I mean by that is, first of all, they never will. But the reason they'll never have the road trip experience is not because they won't take road trips, although that seems more and more unlikely. The reason they'll never have the road trip experience is that they'll have mobile devices with them. So they'll never be bored. They'll always be able to do something. They'll be listening to music, or they'll be watching their favorite movies, or they'll be checking whatever. At the very least, they'll be doing what we used to do in the back seat, screaming, "Are we there yet?" And they won't even have to do that. They'll just be able to look at exactly where we are. They'll know to a meter where we are. And I think it's kind of a shame, We've done. I've done a bunch of road trips in my life, and I've done teenager road trips with friends. But the family road trip is an American experience, and it's all part of that common culture that it seems to be just kind of evaporating, not just being, it's not so much being wiped out, it's just, and this is the thing, see, this is kind of the point. It's not like there's a common experience that we all had, and it's being replaced by a common experience that they have. I guess maybe you could make the case that it is. But if you listen to the song we were playing, which is Weird Al Yankovic's Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota, it's a ballad, it's almost 7 minutes long. There's just so much in there that is, I think, is just kind of important, First of all, there's a line in the song, and I don't know the song super well. It's not like I just have it memorized or anything, but I do remember a couple things in there. My favorite line is "Next stop, Twine Ball," I think. But there's just something. He says that they're standing in front of the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota. And by the way, of our entire audience, our live audience, which is here pretty much every week, the esteemed Dave Big Booty, or Big Booty, as the case may be, is always the one doing our mission control countdown. And now we find out, to my utter amazement and just sheer envy, he's actually seen the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota. And I've seen pictures of it, but I've never seen the twine ball itself in all of its magnificent majesty and so on. But there's a line there where Weird Al with the family there is looking at the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota, and he says, "Kids, this is what America's all about." And I don't know why I find that so true, but it is. Get all kinds of weird thoughts. I was driving in listening to this song, and I thought, first of all, they don't do road trips in Europe, certainly not in the way that we think of them. You can pretty much cross Europe in the amount of time it takes to go from one rest stop on the interstate to the other. Hillary's the biggest ball of wine in New York. Well played, Steve Darrow. When he says this is what America's all about, it really kind of is. I was thinking if you're driving through Europe and you decided to stop and see things, you might see something like, a cathedral, or you might be able to see the Shroud of Turin, or the Somme battlefield, or, this is where, Chaucer wrote Canterbury Tales, or here's the church where, Luther, nailed his theses to the wall and all that. And it's like, it's just so much history there. And this country is so big and so, and new. It's so big and so new that, that you kind of have to make your own, you have to make your own history. And growing up in Florida, which I will, and I'm ready to go to the plate on this one. I maintain, and I will defend this to the death until somebody can provide me with actual physical evidence, not just video evidence. But I maintain that Florida is, by a mile, the most boring state in the union to drive through. Now, I know people are going to come and try and make a case for Kansas, but I'm telling you, Florida's got it. It is as flat as an ironing board, and the Florida Turnpike goes 20 miles, then it cranks 15 degrees to the left, goes another 20 miles, cranks 15 to the right, and goes another 20 miles. I'll talk about my my little patch here in a minute. And there's nothing there, except for, I'm trying to remember some of the ones that we had in Florida. Citrus Tower, I remember, was this gigantic, enormous tower. It's out in the middle of an orange grove. I think it's called Citrus Tower. You just drive. You're already driving, and you're already tired, and you go another 20 minutes or half an hour off, and you can get on the top of this building and go way up high in this, 40, 50, 60-foot tower or whatever it is, and you get to see everything around, which is orange trees. And what was there? There was it Crystal Springs? It was the giant water skiing, water park, mermaids kind of thing, and most of them were gone by the time I left Florida. That was '88. But back in Miami, they had things like Serpentarium, and what was that? What was that place with all the parrots? Might have been called Parrot Kingdom for all I know. In any event, it's just an experience to see these things, and there was something just so kind of clean about it, just good-hearted. Like it's almost like a lemonade stand for adults, Well, Grandpa spent his entire life not talking to his kids or his wife. All he was doing was out in the garage there, bumming string off of people, and now he's wound the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota, which by the way, is awesome, because it's not the biggest ball of twine in the world. It's not even the biggest ball of twine in America. It's just the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota, which is what is super, super, super great about that. And that whole roadside culture is largely gone. I know that the interstates drove a lot of it away. My wife and I had a chance to drive up to Vegas several times, and one or two exits we try to stop, which is where I-15 intersects Route 66. And there's some very, 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 very bizarre little things right there. But Route 66, I tried to explain to her, is just it's just a highway, strip of highway, and every 10, 20 miles or whatever, you'd come to a new town. And then basically all of the east-western traffic of the United States is on this road. And everybody was doing everything they could to rope people in. Now, there's an absolute master of this, and I haven't seen him as much as I would like lately. I remember back in the golden days of blogging, I used to read his stuff every day. But it's James Lilacs. If you've never heard of James Lilacs, he is a commentator and stuff. But he has something, I'm sure it's still there, called the Institute of Official Cheer, and it is nothing but Americana. It's just all the different stuff from like our living past. It's a giant memory box for people who are right about our age, my age, which is frickin' 60. Unbelievable. But the Institute of Official Cheer is just absolutely brilliant. Stoutcat says he's the Mark Twain of the 21st century. I couldn't agree more. He's just really great. If you go there, I cannot recommend it highly enough. I think it's at Lilacs, LILEKS.com, the Institute of Official Cheer. And there you will find things like a collection of matchboxes, not matchboxes, of matches that salesmen used to sell. They go around the country, these guys, and they would go to, Tony's restaurant, and they say, you know what you need, Tony? You need a book of matches with your slogan on the back and so on. So there's all of these things, and Lilacs is such a great writer. He writes the thing out as if he was the salesman trying to make the next sale, shows this incredible collection. And the two things that are the most memorable on the Institute of Official Cheer are books. One of them's a book that he wrote called the what is it? What is it? It's not the cookbook. It's I guess it's the gallery of regrettable food. There it is. Somebody, Rubber City just beat me to it. The Gallery of Regrettable Food. It is. You just have to go and see. Seriously, you take my word for it. You have to go and see the Gallery of Regrettable Food at the Institute of Official Cheer at lilacs.com, because the Gallery of Regrettable Food is a collection of photographs that are actual photographs taken from people like Kraft and Cheese Whiz and all of these things designed to create delicious recipes for you to put so that you can put some sour cream into your olive loaf. And honest to God, there is stuff in the Gallery of Regrettable Food that was sold to the American people and is just the most, just visually, you're not tasting anything, just looking at it, just visually is the most repellent stuff I've ever seen. It makes like the aliens, the eggs from Aliens or the pods from Invasion of the Body Snatchers look like chocolates, like bon mots. Some of this stuff is simply unbelievably disgusting. It's absolutely horrible. But the one thing that I liked the most by far at the Institute of Official Cheer was a tour of the Gobbler, which was a motel in Minnesota. And it was built at a time, it's just not describable. I just cannot recommend it highly enough. It is an elaborate and detailed photo spread of a motel in Minnesota called the Gobbler. And it was probably built in either very late 50s or early 60s, and it was trying to be the coolest place ever. And so was it in Wisconsin? I'm sorry, Dave Big Booty is our expert here. I thought it was in Minnesota, but it's not. It's in Wisconsin. The Gobbler was a kind of place where they would shag carpeting was just coming in. So the hallway would be electric blue shag carpeting with shag, this long. And the shag carpeting would be all the way across the hallway on the floor and all the way up the walls. And the dining room and his commentary on the faces of the people and what they were thinking, because the brochure for the Gobbler is simply otherworldly. And there's a video. Who knew? Or maybe it's just a link. Anyway, it's just tremendous. And what I'm saying is that there's just something, like I said, there's something like these roadside attractions. Ian Little says, carpets on the walls of the 60s were crazier than I thought. Dude, you won't believe your eyes. You won't believe your eyes. It is the most... that section, the section on the Gobbler, it's been torn down, Simon, I think. But it's almost like every single photograph is the dictionary definition of tacky. It's the only word for it. If it's the same Gobbler, I can't believe it's remodeled. If it's the same Gobbler, surely they're not going to have it look the same, because if it is, I'm going to Wisconsin to see the Gobbler. But anyway, you can see it at the Lilac site, and it is in every way just unbearably bad taste. I mean, it's just you can't get to the Gobbler from having bad taste. You have to have a design genius who's one of those once in a lifetime people that have anti-taste. They have a genuine vision and a talent for things that are offensive to the eye, and it's incredible. But again, it was out there trying to rope some roadside business, and I really have always liked. All right, there's a dare now. He's sending me a link to the Gobbler Theater. I've just got to see if this is right. I don't know. Let me see. Is there anything on the venue here? Could be. No, I don't think so. No, I'm pretty sure that's not it. I'm pretty sure that's not it. There is certainly a theater called the Gobbler Theater, but I don't think that's it, unless it was at the same spot. It doesn't really matter. In any event, it was just so tacky, and at the same time, and this is the part I'm trying to get at, it's a hard point to make. It's so tacky, and things like the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota. The left just mocks this. This is the definition of oikophobia, fear of the familiar. Every single person that you are ever going to see on television and all the rest of it. Okay, Simon says that is it. It's renovated, but it's lost its charm. It was probably just at the same spot. Go to the Lilacs link, and it's here in the chat section. I'm sure we'll find it. LILEKS.com, Institute of Official Cheer, the Gobbler. But there's something just obviously so American about it, and these New York intellectuals and LA intellectuals and all of these highbrow, geniuses that are moral betters and intellectual betters too. Let's not forget. Just look on this with real, genuine venom, because for many, many people like that, they look at something like the Gobbler or the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota, and they see it as this indictment of just how cheesy and tacky and culture-free America is. And all of these things on some level are true, but they don't seem to get the beauty of it. I can't put my finger on what it is. Just the entrepreneurial, family-run, kind of almost Barnum-esque kind of, boosterism. And with I have not seen any exceptions, but none of them were selling something that wasn't there. I mean, you're going to the There's a house where supposedly things go uphill, and there's something, I think, in Arizona called, or New Mexico, called The Thing. Have you seen The Thing? And then the billboards start 150 miles out. And then you just keep getting closer and closer. The Thing is waiting. There's a rest stop, and I want to say it's between either Georgia and South Carolina or South Carolina and North Carolina on I-95, and it is called South of the Border, and about 200 miles out, over an hour away, at least that. Yep, there we go. Lord Bio sees it. So at least an hour away, you start seeing these billboards. And they were witty billboards. I forget what they said, but they were clever. And they've got this kind of cartoon, kind of Mexican sleeping with his sombrero. I'm sure that's going to be ripped down too in just a minute or two. So you're by the time you get close, you're just vibrating. I mean, you gotta see it. You can't. How can you not stop and see it? I'm sorry. I'm going to center up a little bit here. That's a little better. And it's really nothing there, except for the advertisement of itself. As I said, Natasha and I have stopped at this place on Route 66 where Route 66 intersects I-15, and it is a giant mini mall. It's not even a mini mall. I can't describe it. It's like, imagine you took a railway car and cut a hole in the side of it and attached it to a Quonset hut, and then down on the other end was kind of a container build. It is just the most freaky place you've ever seen. And you put 25 cents in this thing. It's a box. And then the top starts shaking, and you hear a person in there trying to get out. That's it. There's your quarter or 50 cents or whatever it is. And it's surreal. It's surreal. But it's also very cool. And that's what I like the most, I think, about that song. Because I really do think that if you listen to The Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota, which, if you come late to the party, was what we played for our walk-in music today. If you listen to that song, you'll tell that Weird Al Yankovic is certainly making fun of it, but he also loves it. You can tell he loves it. He loves it and he respects it. He's sending it up, but he does. And in those car trips, they're just a little part of a window of history. Probably existed from the 50s to the 70s, maybe a little later, and they're gone. And it's just something I grew up with, and some of you grew up with, and so many jokes that we get to share as a generation really don't make any sense to people who came before or after it. The biggest one, of course, is the "Are we there yet?" You're going on a road trip, 4-hour drive, 8-hour drive, 10-hour drive, whatever. And if you're 5-6 years old and you're sitting in the back seat of a Mercury Marquis station wagon with, Woody on the side, 1968 thing, there's a hood the size of an aircraft carrier deck, and you would just drive and drive and drive in the middle of nowhere. There's no radio, and there's no way you could find radio that the family would agree on anyway, and there's simply nothing to do. And after a while, you get tired of talking, and then you start to invent things to do. You start playing the license plate game, and you start singing the 99 bottles of beer on the wall, which will drive absolute. That song would drive somebody with the sobriety of Clarence Thomas or somebody like that. Would drive them to madness, and I don't think it would take very long. 20 questions, yes, and all of those awesome riddles, which I used to love. I loved them. Those great riddles. My favorite of which was a guy is inspecting. He's got a huge ranch in Texas. He leaves on a Sunday, and he comes back in 5 days, all also, he leaves on Sunday, he's gone 5 days, and he comes back on Sunday. And we're sitting there in this car with my planetarium friends trying to figure this one out. And we're thinking, okay, has it got something to do with the international date line, maybe? You know, if the guy was up, let's just say he drove up, if he rode up to the North Pole and he went around you know, what, how, you're just trying to figure out this, this thing. And then as Loyola says, it's like, turns out that the name of the horse was Sunday. He leaves on Sunday, he comes back on Sunday. And when you get it, it's so much fun. It's so cool because you can kill hours and hours and hours that way by trying to figure it out, try to get to it. Another one I remember was a man lives in a high-rise apartment building. He lives on the 20th floor. On clear days, he gets off at the 10th floor, but on rainy days, he goes all the way up to the 20th floor. What's going on? Turns out the guy is a midget, and he can only reach the 10th floor button, but on rainy days, he has his umbrella with him, so he can hit the 20th floor button. It's just cool. I don't know. I just love it. Anyway, I just thought I'd go a little bit back there for the old road trip thing, so that was kind of fun. Let's see. A couple people have remarked about this little thing you do to here. It's exceedingly small. I wouldn't have brought it to anyone's attention, but somebody asked. It is just a tiny little patch there. I've got a little hole in my chest the size of a .22 caliber hit. I went to the dermatologist yesterday. Was it yesterday? I think it was. Yesterday, Thursday. Yeah. And I went. So here comes your biannual lecture for what it's worth, and we won't waste a whole lot more time with this. But I went to the dermatologist, and there were little, scaly things here and there and stuff, and so I get the whole full body scan, and this was kind of just a cyst. There was nothing to it, but it was, it was bugging me. So the guy just went in there and cleaned it out and dug it out and lidocaine. Is it lidocaine, the Novocaine thing? It's a miracle, just a miracle. And if Natasha shot me, I wouldn't be here to talk about it, because even if she used her 22, it'd go right here, just absolutely mathematical dead center up between my eyes. She's such a great shot. So I had that done, and then you can see like a little mark here, and then was it on my lip here and stuff, and the reason this is your biannual lecture is because, and I might actually do a firewall on this, although I'm looking forward to the firewall topics. Thinking of it as a firewall topic, this kind of preventative medicine kind of thing. I remember we talked about this, and to my utter astonishment, one of my great, great heroes in life, Bert Rutan, told me that I saved his life, because in an afterburner years ago, I talked about going in and having my radioactive tracer dye test, and I talked about going in there and getting the test done, and Bert said he made him do it, and he told me later personally a couple times that he was probably just a few days away from a heart attack, and they found all this stuff, and just the consequences of thinking about that just leave me speechless. But to the degree that some people actually might see this and make a difference, I'm going to invest 5 minutes on this. I thought about this as kind of a philosophical way. I know Bert real well, very well. I've been to his house countless times. I went up to visit him for 4th of July 3-4 years in a row, and I'm planning on going up again this summer. So I was thinking about a good metaphor and a good, good way to explain it. So here's how I think it works. First of all, most people under 40 probably doesn't apply to, but that's not much of a problem because we don't have a whole lot of much younger people. But there are a number of people out there who are worried that they have a symptom of something and they think it might be something serious, and they won't go to the doctor because they're afraid of getting bad news. And while I have had all kinds of strange emotional and intellectual beliefs and so on, this one I've never really understood. So the way I can think about it is this way. I don't know if this is still true. I don't know an awful lot about cars, but I remember I had, I think it was a Honda CRX, that little tiny little Honda, back in the early 90s. And I had one and then I had another one, used both obviously. And I think it was the CRX. But on at least 2 occasions, and maybe more, the timing belt, which is a little, kind of just a drive belt, like a fan belt or generator belt, the timing belt would go, and it would destroy the engine. It's like a $10,000 piece of electronics frying to protect a 5-cent fuse, and this timing belt would wear thin, and when the timing belt broke, it not just have to replace the timing belt. It destroyed the engine. I mean, it screwed up all the valves. It was like a prop strike on an airplane. It was just craziness, crazy. And I remember this happened to me twice. I'm driving along, and then ping, and it's like nothing. The car's not starting. Get it towed. What do we need? Your timing belt broke. Oh, so we need a new timing belt? No, you need a new engine, because it's basically destroyed the engine, and so on and so forth. So here's the way I've come to think about this preventative care thing. You should change your timing belt now, and it's going to cost you a timing belt, but it's not going to cost you the engine. And what I mean by that is, if you have any kind of symptoms, scaly patch of skin, or maybe some signs of colon distress, or you got a lump, or whatever, I cannot tell you the importance of going in and getting that taken care of, because while if you go in there and 9 out of 10 times you don't get the bad news at all. There is no bad news. You just were worried about something that wasn't there before, and you've been worrying, and it's been eating you away and just kind of gnawing at you, and you just keep pushing it back. I'm not going to think about it, going to push it back, and so on. So most of the time, if you get it checked out, you're going to find out that there's really nothing there. But the tragedy, I think, the one tragedy I will not expose myself to, or anybody who I care about either, I will not expose them to what I think is the ultimate tragedy in life in the 21st century. It's up there anyway. And that is to find out that when you've let the symptom go for so long, that you're now hospitalized. And to me, the nightmare is to find out that I have a condition that is now fatal, but wouldn't have been fatal if I checked on it when I first started to notice it, or after 2 years of starting to notice it, or 5 years, or whatever. The idea that because I was so afraid of the results that I didn't go down and get something that was suspicious checked out to me is the ultimate nightmare. And one of the things I've also begun to realize as we get a little older, or a lot older as the case may be, I feel that having turned 60, I feel like a guy whose body the warranty just expired. I feel like the warranty's gone. Car's in good shape, but it's not covered anymore. And now I'm looking at wanting to get another 100,000 miles out of this car, and I have 2 ways I can deal with this. I can either just run it hard and replace the parts as they fail, which eventually is going to mean things like a failed transmission, which are going to bankrupt you. There's just no way you can afford it. There's no way it doesn't make sense to put it into a car. You put an $8,000 transmission job into a $3,000 car. It doesn't make much sense. So feeling like a guy who's just come out of warranty, it's even more important now for me and for all of you, or virtually all of you as well, to act on whatever you may have bothering you right now, like tomorrow. You really need to write it down tonight, write it down right now, and promise yourself you'll go tomorrow, because even if you have the worst case scenario, something terrible, if I've got a pain or a symptom or something, and I don't want to go, I don't want to face it, I don't want to deal with it, and you finally go down there and you find out something really worst case scenario, terrible, you've got prostate cancer, let's say. That instant when you get that news is the instant that the cancer stops having a free ride. The counterattack and the defense begins that moment. And if you are one of those people who has a cancer diagnosis, the day you get that diagnosis, which is like getting a hammer swung in your face, I understand that. But the instant you get that diagnosis is the instant that you begin to fight back, effectively fight back. And while we talked earlier about a friend of ours who we never met, but person we felt very close to, died recently of cancer. I don't know what the situation was in terms of that, and I understand sometimes things just come on very, very fast. But we need every single one of you out there. We just need every one of you. And with some rare exceptions these days, it is nothing like the death sentence that it used to be. It's just not. I had a friend who had testicular cancer when he was 24. I was 10 years older than him. And I was talking about this recently. I forget where. It was in the right angle, talking about that Air Force cadet who fought off cancer. And he had a 5-6 hours after the operation, I go to visit him in his room. He's got this IV running, and this green stuff is coming out of him. It's the color of a Mountain Dew can. I mean, it's not like dark green. It's just fluorescent green. And he went through a year of this, a year of chemotherapy. He would tell me many years after, he said, for about 6 months, it was exhausting to watch TV. Just watching TV took all the energy I have. And you can say to yourself, well, I don't know if I'm going to go through that. But he went through it 25 years ago. He's married. He's happy. He's done a bunch of great work. He still enjoys football games and all the rest of it. And he had, not only was it testicular cancer, but it spread to his lymph nodes. He had his lymph nodes removed. And this was 20 years ago, which doesn't seem like a long time, but things have come along very well since then. So I know this doesn't apply to a whole lot of people, but there are some people, and even if it's one person who it does apply to, I would just ask you to look at this little area here, and there's a burn there, where I just decided to go into a dermatologist. The guy looks me over with ultraviolet light. It was really cool. It's almost like having a tricorder scan. And he put a little liquid nitrogen on this, and off you went. Martin Archer says he has no health insurance, and that's... I can relate to that, Martin. Most of my life I went without health insurance. I went 40 years without health insurance. I can certainly relate to that. I would recommend, and I know this sounds a little humiliating, and to some extent it may be, but I certainly did it. And this is all I'm trying to do right now, is give you permission to go do these things, You just go down and find yourself a clinic. And just fill out the form. It may be $5, and if you don't have the $5, it's free. Go into a clinic and just go see a regular guy. It doesn't even matter if it's a nurse, and tell them if there's something you're worried about. Tell them about that, and then do it. I don't know if I ever mentioned this. I might have mentioned it once or twice, but it's been a long time. I was 1988, I guess, and I saw Batman, the first of the Batman with Michael Keaton, and I watching Batman, and I thought, he's really smart. I could do all that smart stuff. I'm just a 98-pound weakling, and for some reason or another, I just decided that night, I'm going to go to the gym. So I went to the gym every single day. I was working as a limo driver. I went every day. If I missed a day, I started to panic, and I got myself into really pretty good shape, and then. I had some friends who were also going to the gym. And after I'd been bulking up for about a year. One of them said, you need to go to free weights, because I was just using, the universal machines and just constantly adding weight, just constantly. I don't know, Martin, but you can Google it, and if you need some help, we'll let you know. Anybody know of any free clinics in LA? I assure you they're everywhere. Anyway, so I'm doing free weights, and I don't like free weights. And because I'd been using a universal machine, I hadn't gotten any balance or anything, but I had built up a fair amount of strength. So I'm doing the incline press with enough weight for me to balance, but it's just no challenge at all. So we put some more weight on this thing, and he's spotting me, and I'm doing the incline press, and as I'm pushing up and I'm getting the reps in, because I wasn't used to the balance, my left arm just gave out. And it happened so fast. It went down, all the things fell off. The guy didn't have time to catch it in the spot. I dug my neck back into the thing to form like a triangle so I wouldn't fall off. I just instantly dug my neck back into this thing to brace myself. And then the next day I couldn't move my neck. And I remember going to the movies with my mom, and she was sitting next to me, and I had to turn at the waist, to talk to her. So I went to chiropractor and all the rest of that stuff. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And finally, somebody said, you need to get an MRI. And I don't remember exactly how that happened, but I got the MRI done because I was stone cold broken. This is the point of the story. I got the MRI done, and I'm coming out of the machine, and the monitor is 20 or 30 feet away. It's a long distance away in an office. The monitor that's got the pictures of my scan that I just got pulled out of the tube for, which I loved, by the way. The MRI I thought was awesome. Just really, it's like really great lost in space astronaut hibernation chamber kind of thing. But I look over there, and I can see from across the room that my spinal column is doing this like that, just this gigantic kind of U-turn like that, and then down. Well, that's not good. So we gave those things to a doctor, and he said you've got a herniated disc and a ruptured disc, and the ruptured disc is going to have to come out. And I said, well, I can't do it. I don't have any money. And he recommended that I go to Florida vocational rehab. Now, here's where the story gets interesting, because needless to say, I talk an awful lot about government health care and how much I'm opposed to the government running at least all of the health care and so on. But I went down to the state of Florida vocational rehab office. And I went in there with an attitude of real humility. Ian, you hold that thought. Don't you let me forget that. I'm going to come back to you. So I went into this bureaucracy office, and I need to remind myself of this, because sometimes I just get so bound up in the kind of the orthodoxy and the, sometimes I forget about the ground level on the ground basis of this stuff. So I went into this office to see about whether or not the state of Florida would cover the cost of this operation, which was a significant cost. And I went in with real humility. Not, I wasn't faking it. I was just the entire idea that they might even do it just stunned me. And as it turned out, I was the very first person that this new trainee had. And there was a supervisor with that trainee. And they asked me a bunch of questions, and I answered them. And then they gave me a call, and they said that they would cover the operation. And I said, "Thank you, thank you." And I said, "I feel bad about taking this money." And then they said something that I never forgot. Actually, the caseworker said, "Well, Bill, here's how it can go. Your neck is injured, and that's not going to change. So the state has a choice. We can pay for this operation, get you back at work, and have you be a functioning taxpayer for the rest of your life, or we don't pay for it, and you go on disability for the rest of your life. And it's a big, 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 big financial incentive for us to go with A. And that actually made me able to live with this, It just made me feel like, okay. And sure enough, I don't know if it all went to the state of Florida, but it certainly went to the federal government and other things, and some of it went to the state of government in taxes. And I thought that was actually really a very decent, civilized way of looking at things in a very kind of not, hey, there's free money everywhere, just we'd rather fix you and have you be a taxpayer than not fix you and have you be a drain on resources for the rest of your life. So anyway, they went and did it, and it's hard to see. There's a little scar. Is it right there? Yeah. They made a little incision there, and the guy told me what he's going to do. He says, "We're going to go in there. We're going to put this incision right on one of the wrinkles in your neck, so you'll never actually see it." And I remember thinking, I think I said this to him. I'm obviously not a medical student, but I'm relatively sure that my spinal cord's actually in the back of my neck, and that in the front of my neck there are all kinds of important tubes and stuff. And he said, "Yeah, but we're not gonna do that. We're gonna go in and do it orthoscopically, is it?" So I'm at the hospital. I'm nervous and I'm alone. And I go in and somebody says hi, and they say hi. I get into the little outfit, and this guy comes in and they put a little what those things called, catheter into my arm. They put a little needle into my wrist here, top of my wrist, tape it up, and then they can inject all the drugs they want to. And then this guy comes into this room. I was probably 32 years old, something like that. And I'm lying there and I'm pretty nervous, although they gave me some Valium or something. And after a little bit of Valium, you'll do anything. You jump out of an airplane without a parachute, you don't care. You go into a burning building and rearrange the furniture. You just don't care. It's amazing. And then this guy came in and he said, "Bill, I'm about to give you some absolutely amazing drugs." And I said, "Okay." So he starts this injection. He says, "Okay, I want you to just count down from 100. Count down backwards from 100. And I think, okay, 100. I'm thinking I'm going to get to about 60 maybe, somewhere in there. Because I don't feel a thing. 100, 99, your room is spinning, gone. And the next thing I remember was I could hear people, but I couldn't see anything. I knew I was in the hospital. I heard nurses saying, "It's all right, Bill. Everything's good." And apparently, coming out of it, I must have asked them 30 times if everything's okay. And you don't have any memory with the when you have the general anesthesia. So this is probably the 15th time she answered that question. I said, "When are you going to start?" And they said, "Oh, we're done." And that's the experience, by the way. If you're terrified of an operation, if you're really scared of an operation, and I understand this, I was pretty scared at the time too. One of the reasons I'm not scared anymore is because I've had these experiences. If you're really scared about having an operation, I can tell you that here's what the operation consists of. You sit on a bed in a room like you do when you have a normal doctor's exam. They put a little IV thing into your wrist, which hurts about as much as having the blood taken. And then a guy will come in and he'll give you a shot. And the next thing you know, you'll be waiting for the procedure to start and it'll be over. It's honest to God. That's it. That's all there was. When do we start? Oh, we're all done. And I remember when I heard we're all done, I was moving my fingers and my toes. And I thought, okay, so I can move my fingers and my toes. That's a good sign since they were working on my cervical column. But anyway, they went in there and they drilled out this bad disc and they packed it with... they actually packed it with cadaver or something or other. It was ground up bones of somebody. I don't know why they use that, but apparently it works. And so I'm actually two of us here. I don't know who else is coming around with me, and I kind of would like to know, actually. So between C5 and C6 on my neck, there's those two discs are fused together, and somebody else is walking around with me. I don't know who. Presumably it's all mixed up pretty well. Anyway, so those two bones use this stuff to join together and they fuse, and so I don't have as much mobility in my neck, but I, I'm cured. And then I will just add this. The surgery was at about 2 o'clock, I want to say. I woke up around 4:30. I'm in ICU, and then they take me up to my room, and I'm sitting there in the bed, and it's around 6 maybe. And you're not supposed to eat before you get the anesthesia, so I was starving. And I'm sitting up in the bed. It's a semi-private room. A guy next to me is having a hospital dinner. He's having a pork chop. And this nurse comes in and she says, "Would you like a little wet sponge or something to just kind of suck on to kind of keep you, keep your throat from getting too dry?" And I said, "What I'd really like is one of those pork chops." And she said, "Well, you seem to be recovering well." And I said, "If you have 2 of the pork chop dinners, I'd like that even better." So I'm just wolfing down these pork chops. Some friends came in to visit the next day. I checked out of the hotel. I checked out of the hospital the day after the operation. It was probably about 22 hours after they gave me the shot. I'm out of the hospital and I'm walking home, and I got this giant bandage here, I guess, and you can see some of that stuff they use to stain it so that, I don't know if it's to make the blood not seem so bloody or whatever. It was an antiseptic or antibiotic. I don't know. Anyway, I'm walking home. So I go home, and this is Florida, and it's summer, and I'm hungry. This is the next day. And so at 5 or 6 o'clock, I met some friends of mine down at Sonny's Barbecue on Archer Road, Gainesville. And I am attacking a barbecue chicken rib combo with a large sweet tea, and I'm just wolfing this thing down. I'm covered in barbecue sauce, and I get up to go up to the front to pay, and I look as I'm walking back up to the cash register. I look in one of the booths, and who do I see sitting there but my surgeon? And he says, "Bill, how are you?" I said, "Doing great. You did a fantastic job. Absolutely tremendous. I haven't even had to take any of the aspirins or anything, honestly. I don't feel a thing. It feels great. It feels really good." He says, "You seem to be recovering okay." I said, Yeah, I feel fine. Thanks. It's really, really great work. Thank you very much." He told me when I went to the follow-up visit a couple weeks later, he said his son was sitting there having dinner with him. He said, "Who is that guy?" And he said, "That's the guy whose disc I removed 25 hours ago." So I'm saying all of this stuff not to show you how incredibly brave and courageous I am and stuff. I'm just saying it because the fear of hospitalization, fear of surgery, fear of doctor's office, all of this is a pretty widespread fear, and I'm not saying it's unjustified, but I'm trying to make the case here for you to go out and get anything that you think might need to get done. And if you have health insurance, just go and get a routine checkup. The nice thing about that checkup is if it turns out they find something, you start treating it right away. And the earlier you treat it, the better things get. And even much better than that, because you're very likely not going to find anything serious, even better than that, you'll have the satisfaction of knowing now I can spend the next year and not have to sweat it, clean as a whistle. So here was a little tiny patch of dry, scaly skin. There's a little patch here. There's a little patch here. He's looking over, and I've got some age spots and liver spots. I didn't touch those. He just dips a little Q-tip into liquid nitrogen, which is much better than this previous dermatologist I had several years ago who was utterly incompetent and slovenly, and she would just hit me with this spray, this little metal thing with the liquid nitrogen in it, and she'd just hold it over this thing and shh. And it's like, yeah, that stings a bit. But this guy just put some liquid nitrogen on a Q-tip. He said, "Gonna feel a little cold." Pressed it against it, let it go. Next one, pressed it against it, let it go. This one here, he got 2-3 times, and it's done. It's over. It's all going to fall off, and it's like I just had the timing belt changed, and I mean to get a lot of miles out of this jalopy. I really do. I mean, I got to ride this car for the rest of my life, and I got places to go. So to wrap up this whole lecture, do it. Now, somebody in there, we've still got two issues that we want to deal with, because we're a family here and we take care of our own. One of our Stratosphere loungers is saying that that he doesn't have the money to go. We're gonna find a way to find some sort of clinic or something, and then I know that Lisa's here, and I hate to put it on Lisa, but this is what Lisa was built for. If it turns out that that it really is something, and we can't, something you need to go take a look at, something you're worried about, and you don't have the money, then we'll all kick in a little money. It's no big deal. I mean, I hate to put it on Lisa, but she's just that kind of soul, and I know everybody here can spare a few bucks, and I can certainly spare a few bucks. At the very least, it will get you into the clinic. But here's the point, and this was for Martin, who's been talking about needing to go and not being able to money to go. Here's the point, Martin. A lot of people, a lot of Europeans think that in America, if you have a broken bone or cancer or something like that, and you don't have the money, then you just die in the street like a dog. But that's not what happens here. If you go to the clinic or whatever, and you find out that you've got a serious problem, then you simply tell them, "I just don't have the money for this," and they will essentially come to the conclusion. They will say, "Okay, well, we'll take care of it." And then I know you didn't. Now he's feeling guilty about bringing the whole thing up. You didn't bring anything up. I brought it up. That's why I brought it up. I brought it up specifically for this reason. You're not looking for sympathy, and you never came in here looking for sympathy. I started this conversation specifically to get people to listen about this, and there it goes. So if it turns out that you have something serious that requires, as I did, I had I don't know what that surgery cost, $15,000, $30,000, something like that, maybe more. The state covered it, but even if the state didn't cover it, I would have gone to the hospital, and they would have said, "Okay, well, then we'll eat it. We're going to eat the cost of it." And that cost gets passed on to other people in form of insurance. But that's, you can feel guilty about that or not. But the point is, we need you around, and you're contributing to society. If you're watching the show, you're contributing to society. I have no question about this at all, none. And so we need you. So if it turns out that the hospital eats a few milligrams of painkiller and some time for some surgeons, that's okay. And he says, "I like to help people too," then that's how you pay it forward. But we will definitely do this. Already people are coming up with free primary health care centers in LA, UCLA. And so this is not like Joe's clinic, this is UCLA. So the only thing that you have to overcome is the same thing I had to overcome in my case, which is my pride. He says, "I want to pay people back." Of course you do. Of course you do. We know that. You're an honorable person, and you didn't put yourself in this situation on purpose. I was 45 years old before I had a continuous 4-digit bank account. I mean, I did not have a steady more than $1,000 in my bank account till I was 45. And I know exactly what this is like, and I know that panic and that fear and that choking sense of helplessness. Get over it, for your own good and for our good. We're going to do whatever we can to help, and then and you can pay it forward, and that's how it works. And there's no shame in it, man, because what you're doing is you're giving people like me and everybody else in this incredible Stratosphere Lounge community, you're giving us, I'm getting to you, Ian, you're giving us an opportunity by doing something like this for you. You're giving us an opportunity to pay back people who did it for us, who we can't reach because either they're not here anymore or because they didn't need the help. Pay it forward. Pay it forward. And as it's like the end of Saving Private Ryan, earn it. Just earn it. We'll we'll figure out a way to get through all this together, and then you'll be all right, and then you can do whatever you see fit to earn it. And that's how it's supposed to work. No one's being forced into anything. I'm not taking any money from people by coercion or force. This is actual, genuine, don't freak at the word, charity in the purest sense of the word. It's not pity, and it's not here. It's just genuine, honest to God. People have had things done for them. People have been saved by other people, and anything we can do to help you, we'd be happy to do it. Let's just pay it forward. Looks like we're going to be a little late on the other show's topic, but that's okay because this is really, really important. Ian mentioned what do you do about severe depression. Well, now this one I can give you a couple hours on. I'm eating a carrot, excuse me. I know it's rude and it makes crunchy noises, but I only do one. No, so delicious. Here's a problem with depression, Ian. I don't have to tell you this. It's just I've suffered from it my entire life. Really, certainly from the time I was 14 or 15 at least. And that's a while now. That's 45 years, so I ought to know what I'm talking about. The main problem with depression as a malady, as an illness to have, is that number one, because it's a psychological illness, you don't get to show any real outside symptoms, and it makes you feel like maybe I should just buck up, or maybe I'm just, a crybaby, or maybe this or that, and you probably had relatives or friends who are saying, well, just cheer up, man, what's so bad? But the reason that depression is so heartbreaking is because it is an illness that robs you of your desire to fight the illness. That's a very pernicious thing. It's a very, very tough thing to have an illness whose primary symptom is that you don't really care about how unhappy or miserable you are, and you kind of, not really thinking of killing yourself so much as just having the thought that if I drive off a bridge by accident or something, it wouldn't, solve a lot of problems. That's not the same thing as actively considering suicide, although there are some people who do that too. Having suffered from this and having had an addictive personality my entire life, and having been treated for depression and addictive behavior by going to Narcotics Anonymous, even though I have never ever had a drug use problem, I certainly had the same kind of disease as these people, just had different coping mechanisms. But what I found was that the people I met in Narcotics Anonymous, I thought were just going to be a bunch of homeless drug addicts, burned out, fried losers. And I have never, as a group, with the exception of this group, never met a group of people that I thought was so bright and so funny and in so much pain. It is what it is. It can be just living hell. And the reason I mention this is because most of the time you will have people just look at you and say, well, what's wrong? And you can't tell them what's wrong. And is it money? Is it this? It's like, no. Winston Churchill suffered from crushing depression. Abraham Lincoln suffered from depression that nearly killed him. And they just had to soldier on. And lots of people don't have that kind of strength or support. But things are different now. Churchill referred to depression as the black dog. It was like a black dog that came to visit him. And we'll get to treatment and medication in a second, but the first thing I would say, Ian, is that think about this as a black dog. And the reason I say that is because I know what this is like. There are times, even today, and sometimes I just warn Natasha about it. There are times when I can feel like this weather front moving in, and I can just feel it. I know it, and I can feel myself getting into that starting to get into that trench. Not nearly as bad as it used to be because of medication stuff. Again, I'll come back to that in a minute. But here's the first thing that I learned that really helped me a lot, and it could help you a lot too. And that is, when these episodes start to come on, there's only one thing you need to do, and it's not fight it, and it's not man up or chin up or no, none of that, because it doesn't matter. It's coming. It's like the weather. It's like a cold front. You can't control it. There's nothing you can do about it. And the one thing you can do about it is the only thing that used to help me is to remember that it is going to pass. It's going to be here. It's going to be miserable. You're going to be really sad, and then it'll get better. And if you've got chronic depression, as I did, it'll get better and worse, and so on. But when it's really bad, just think of it as a hurricane outside, and just don't make any big decisions and don't do anything stupid, because you will feel better. It reminds me of an adage that pilots have. A lot of pilots get killed by flying into marginal weather. Nobody gets killed by flying into a hurricane because nobody's that stupid. But a lot of people get killed by flying into conditions that you think there's a very good chance you'll make it, and most of the time you do. But then the weather gets worse and the clouds get lower and you fly into a mountain. And pilots would say about this, they say, if you kill yourself by flying into bad weather, your funeral will be on a sunny day. And I thought that's exactly right. If you kill yourself because of bad weather, low clouds, stormy weather, by the time they're ready to put you in the ground, that front will have come through and it'll be a beautiful sunny day. So there's that. Now look, there's a lot of behavioral problems that come with depression, and the depression leads to the behavioral problems. Those behavioral, what do we want to call them? Maladjustments, let's say, cause you to be in worse trouble, which creates even more depression. So there's going to be a fair amount of work that has to be done on the emotional side of it. But here's the really, really, really good news. Really, really good news. When I was first getting treated for this, it was November 7th of 1985. Remember, crystal clear. I woke up crying. I just called my mom and said, I can't take this anymore, and she finally got me into somebody that she knew, and that's when things started to get better for me. And I got sent to NA meetings, and I fought against that. I said, the only problem I don't have is a drinking or a drug problem. I got everything else, but I don't just go. So I went. And then I heard people I'd never met before tell my life story in some form or another. There was I was probably, it was 85, so I was 26. And I was sitting in the circle, and I remember I was so angry that I felt like and I was so emotionally charged that I felt like my feet were so hot they were going to melt the linoleum. That I remember very, very well. And across this circle stands up a guy who was probably in his mid to late 50s, black man electrician, and he just basically told everybody exactly how I feel. And when this thing was over, I had a number of people come up to me and say, "Here's my phone number. Here's the next meeting," and I just didn't believe them. I just couldn't believe and wouldn't believe that people who I'd never met before would really care that much about me. And it took weeks before I realized that this was actually sincere, but it is sincere. And the reason that concern for you is sincere is, as we were talking about earlier with Martin, it's sincere because these people also walked into a room one night, and people took care of them and made them feel not just cared about. They made them feel like they made me feel immediately that first evening. They made me feel immediately that if something happened to me, somebody would miss me. It would matter. Somebody would know and care. Here's the good news. I did all of this behavioral stuff. I had a therapist. I did just kind of talk therapy twice a week. Helped a lot. And I had a sponsor in Narcotics Anonymous, and he helped an enormous lot. And I will just tell you this, just as an example of the power of this. my sponsor was a guy who used to be a stockbroker, and he made a couple $1,000,000, and then he sniffed all that money up his nose, and he lost his family, lost his apartment, lost his job, lost his car, and next thing you know, he's working in Miami at a Chevron station, pumping gas. And I would go and visit him sometimes because I worked in a nightclub, which is probably not the best thing for. Certainly, the fellow drug addicts and alcoholics couldn't understand it, but it wasn't kidding. I didn't have a drinking problem, and so I went to him one night, and I was just so upset about this. As some girl had said something, or somebody I was interested in, or this happened, or the car was broken. I didn't know what it was. It just fire coming out of my ears, and he just said, "Sit down." I'm telling him about all this stuff that's just bothering me so much. And he looks at me and he says, so do you have a place to sleep tonight? Because, we got a couch, spare place for you to sleep. I said, no, I'm fine. He says, what about hungry? Are you hungry? There's McDonald's. It was a Burger King actually across the street. I got $5 for you. Go over, get a Whopper. You hungry? I said, no. He said, so you got a place to sleep and you're not hungry, right? He says, then what's the problem? And you're stuck, You're stuck. What's the problem? There's so much in those meetings that is so wise and so powerful. And chief among them, I remember, was you'd be in this rebellious mood, I don't know if I really need to be here. And you start arguing with these people who'd been doing this for years. Start arguing with them. And they wouldn't argue with you. They just look at you and say, well, if you're so smart and you got everything all figured out, why are you here? That's got some help. But all of this to say this, I was told by my therapist, there's no magic pill for this. There's no this, there's no that. You're just going to have to tough it out. You're going to have to build up these internal reserves and this internal self-respect and esteem that you never had, and you're going to have to learn how to parent yourself, and all of these things are just going to be hard work. And so I did the hard work. And then I came to Los Angeles and went back to Florida many years later. I looked up this person who was one of 2 or 3, 4 people that have saved my life. And she said, remember when I told you that there's no magic pill for this? I said, yeah. And she said, well, it turns out there might be. This was 1991. I went back to Florida. I was working at the Space Transit Planetarium where I'd been working since 1973. And she said there was something that might be useful. So I got a little, this is really important, and you got to listen to this. I got a little, like a starter kit. Doctors often give these out for medications, little paper cardboard thing with, here's what you take the first day, and here it gives you like a month's supply or something like this. Anyway, she handed me this little starter kit for this this new kind of experimental drug called Prozac. And she said, we're seeing really amazing results with this. We're seeing astonishing results with this. I said, well, since you spent the last 3 years telling me that there was no easy way around this, I'm going to take your word for it. So I went home, I took that first Prozac pill, and it usually takes about 4 days or so, 3 or 4 days for it to really come up. But I'm telling you this from the bottom of my heart. I took this thing, I went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, my first thought when I woke up was, oh, so this is what it's like to wake up a normal human being. This is what being normal feels like. I felt so much better. I couldn't even recognize myself. But it was my waking thought. It was the first thing I had been in my bloodstream for 12 hours maybe. And I wake up and I remember thinking, okay, so this is what it's like for everybody else. That particular medication is generic now. It's not terribly expensive. It's widely prescribed. And what you're probably going to find, if you've got significant ongoing depression, you will absolutely benefit from this medication. I'm telling you, it will change your life, and it'll change your life in 24 hours. You are suffering from depression because you have a serotonin deficiency. And if you feel self-conscious about taking antidepressants, you're in the exact same boat as somebody who's a diabetic and who feels self-conscious about taking insulin. You're not manufacturing enough of this stuff that you need in your head. And nobody's really sure why it happens, but it happens to a lot of people. It certainly happened to me. And your emotions are swinging around all over the place because they're not being regulated the way that they should be regulated if you had enough serotonin in your bloodstream. So Prozac was the first of the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And basically what Prozac does is it blocks your body's ability to remove serotonin from your system, and your serotonin levels go up, and all of a sudden, man, life is 90% easier. You've still got a bunch of emotional baggage that's trailing you around, but you can just do it. Now, Ian just writes, I know there are doctors out there who are not out for the patient's best interest. That is, if you'll pardon me from saying so, that is an excuse that you are giving yourself in order to not go. And as they would say in Narcotics Anonymous, that's your disease talking. This illness, this addictive behavior, depression illness, is unbelievably nasty and pernicious, and it works on you in ways you don't even know about. So when I see somebody say something like, well, there are just a lot of doctors out there who are not very reliable, I feel enormous connection to that statement, because that is your disease basically saying, you don't need any help, you're doing just fine. I have yet to run into a doctor who doesn't look out for their patient's best interests, and so I would say I just kind of call BS on that one. You're going to find that there's a lot of that. You're going to find a lot of resistance to it. And one of the worst things about trying to recover from this is the what's the word they used? It's been a long time. It's a simple word. It's like when you fall off the wagon. I can't remember it. Anyway, so you start getting treatment, you start getting the medication, you start maybe doing some of this behavioral stuff, you start going to NA meetings or AA meetings or whatever meetings you find to be interesting. Every one of the 12 relapse, thank you. Thank you very much, guys. There's 17 cases of relapse. Yeah, so you're doing better. And in fact, you're feeling so much better, you're in a state that we would call a pink cloud. You're in a pink cloud now. Things are better, you can feel better. All the world looks much, much better. All of that hopelessness is gone. You're feeling like, my God, I'm making incredible progress. This is unbelievable. And then a relapse will occur, because they will always occur. Always, always, always happens to everybody. And when it comes back after you felt better, it was the most dangerous time for me, because that's when I thought, okay, there's no way out of this. This is just, this is just never going to go away. Well, I mean, to some degree, I'm right. It never does go away. It's the pain goes away, and the enormous majority of my time is really fun now. But even with this ongoing medication, and it took 10 years to dial that in exactly the way I want it. But even with that, I'm basically functioning like a normal person now. I have a normal emotional reaction to things and a normal level of fear and anxiety about things. But still, every now and then, a couple times a year now for me, I can feel it, and I can see it out at sea. I can see this real clear line of black clouds. I can feel it coming in, and I have eventually had the wisdom to realize that there's nothing I can do about that. You're just gonna have to ride it out. It's just a hurricane. This is so heartbreakingly poignant and sincere. He writes, I just want a wife, a house, and family. That's all I want. That's all I wanted too. Honest to God, all of this, publicity and small amount of fame and all the rest of it, I just wanted a wife, a house, and a family. That's it. And I got it. And I got it not because I toughed it out, and I didn't get it because I got lucky. Ian, this is the best part you're going to have to remember. Of all the things so far, you need to remember this one thing. All of those things are possible. You can achieve all of those things, but you are going to have to work. You're going to have to work at it. It is not going to come to you through a magic pill. It's not going to come to you through toughing it out. You are going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to make a decision whether or not you want to get better or not. And another useful idea we learned in all of those meetings was this idea of hitting bottom. Hitting bottom, I hit bottom on November 5th of 1987. Sorry, November 7th of 1985. That was the day I woke up and I decided, and this is really important, so please listen. That was the day I woke up and said, I will do anything to not feel like this anymore. I will do anything. I'm ready. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. Somebody told me I had to paint myself blue and go out under a full moon on a golf course and swat myself on the head with a palm frond. If that's what they told me, I would have done it. And that's the honest to God, unvarnished truth, Ian. That's the truth. You can have all of those things, but you won't get them. They will not come to you. You will continue to go through the same thing of doing the same thing again and again and again and making the same mistakes with women, same mistakes with money. It's going to happen again and again and again and again and again. It's never going to change until you reach the point when you decide that you don't want to do this anymore, that you can't do it anymore. And when that feeling becomes more powerful than this voice that's telling you not to do anything about it, when that feeling and that, well, it's not a feeling, when that pain becomes more powerful than the voice of denial, then you'll have an excellent chance, a really excellent chance of not only recovering from this. And here's the good news: there is actually good news in this. If you do the work, and it's work that takes a lifetime. You're never going to stop working on it, but your life will get better fast. And if you do the work, you're going to come out of life with something that people who don't have your problems don't have. You're going to come out of it with a fundamental level of compassion and understanding that not even the best-hearted people have. There are people out there whose hearts are just made out of gold, and we've got most of them here on the Stratosphere Lounge crowd. And I see so many people who are so willing to help just out of good-natured friendship and just plain respect, just one citizen to another. But if they have not suffered from it themselves, then they are responding out of the kindness of their heart, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But you will be able to see things and talk about things and help people in a way that somebody who has not been through this just simply can't. And it's not exactly the kind of exclusive club I wanted to be in. I would have rather been in the Playboy Club, to be honest with you. But the fact is, it comes a real benefit, and you will develop a wisdom out of this. But look, man, it's really simple, and it doesn't get any simpler than this. You'll start feeling better when you decide that you want to feel better. And I know that sounds like a cold thing to say, because your first reaction to that is, I hate this, I feel horrible, I'll do anything to feel different. If you'll do anything to feel different, then tomorrow you'll go find if you have health insurance, you'll talk to your doctor and ask to see a psychologist. And the psychologist will talk to you and ask some questions, and the psychologist will then send you to a psychiatrist. It will be a psychiatrist who will have to prescribe this medication. And the medication will come. You will get the medication. There's no question about it. You're clearly depressed. It's generic medication. Even if you don't have health insurance, this stuff is $2 for 30 pills or something like that. It's just plain lucky like that. And when you decide to do it, you'll begin. And if it turns out that you need more pain before this happens, I'd love to be able to tell you that I could step in there and take that away from you, or that all of us together could take it away from you, but that's just a lie. If you're not ready to go yet, it's because you're not hurting bad enough yet. And now there's a race on to see who's going to win, whether you're going to get enough pain to get to the bottom and decide you'll do anything to get better, or is this disease going to prove stronger than you and you're just going to stay like this until you're not here anymore? just 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 do it, man. Sometimes I had an actual miracle happen to me yesterday. I was so close to this entire idea, and I might talk about this later, or I may not, I don't know. But yesterday there was an actual, genuine, knock me in the face, gobsmack miracle. And these are available for the asking, but you've got to ask. You've got to ask. You've got to ask for help. Ask and ye shall receive, and seek and ye shall find. What God is saying there is that yes, there will be people to pull you up and help you, but no one's going to come after you to do it. You've got to want it. If you don't want it, it's not going to work. I was rooming with two guys who were both NA roommates of mine. I loved them. They were great, great guys. And one of them wanted to get better, and the other one didn't. And the guy who wanted to get better, I wanted to get better too. We're doing things we needed to get better, and this other guy wasn't. And we would talk about him. His name was John, and we'd say, he hasn't hit bottom yet. Because if he had hit bottom, he'd be doing anything, including what we were doing. So look, man, I'm here to tell you, it works. I don't mean to be the center of attention. Ian, you didn't make yourself the center of attention. I made your case the center of attention. Actually, I made my case the center of attention because people were there to help me, and they saved my life. And to the degree that we can do that for you, that's great. And I have a lot of confidence that it's going to work for you and that it's going to get better. And that as time goes on in the years to come, we're going to hear more and more from you about how positive things are, and then something's going to happen in another year or two or three or whatever. Somebody else is going to mention something like that, and you'll be able to jump in there and help them and pay it forward. So we're going to be looking. Next week we expect to see some progress, and if you don't do it between now and then, it's not like we won't love you anymore, or not that we hate you or think you're a loser. It's just we're going to remind you next week, and we're going to keep reminding you and let you know that you're not in this by yourself. You feel like you are, but you're not. And not only are the Stratosphere Lounge crew behind you, but there are armies of people out there right this second. Within 5 miles or 2 miles or 1 mile of where you live right now, there are hundreds of people within 5 miles of where you live, hundreds of them, who will do just about anything to help you because they needed the help and they got it. And that's why I go down this road every now and then. I just do it because this is all I can do to pay back the people who were there for me, like my sponsor and all the rest of those people. So just do it. Make a note for today, tomorrow. I don't know what your situation is, whether you have health care, a doctor, or whatever, but look, if it turns out you're in a position where you don't have those things, find a clinic, go talk to just a regular health clinic, tell somebody you're suffering from depression, and then they will recommend you to a clinic, and that person will then recommend you to a psychologist, which might be... My psychologist, when I walked in there, said, I think I should see you twice a week. And I said, I don't have any money. And she said, well, what do you have? I said, I mean, I got like nothing. It's just an insult. Well, and she's doing this for a reason now. She said, well, what could you pay? And I said, I don't know, $5 a week? She said, okay, we'll start at $5 a week. We'll start at $5 a week, and then as things get better, we'll see about raising it. But for now and for the foreseeable future, for as long as, don't worry about it, it's going to be $5 a week. And the reason she made me pay $5 a week was because I had to buy it. I couldn't just be given it. I had to buy it. I had to pay for it. It didn't matter what I was paying, but I did have to pay for it. So you say you've got some form of health insurance. This is a very simple thing, and it's a painless thing. And I suspect that you'll have the dual roads that most of us follow. One of them is the medication road, which will enormously, enormously improve your ability to fight this. And that's actually the easy stuff. It's just, you take a pill every day and you'll feel significantly better. But you won't have to go through what I went through when I started doing this, which is try to fight all of the behavioral issues while you're still under that chemical cloud. You're going to find that that you'll feel a lot better, and the magic pill will be great. And then, once you're feeling better, then you'll be confronted with the wreckage of all of the things that you've done during these years, and you're going to have to go back and fix that. And that is hard, nasty work, really nasty work. But that's what it costs. So, are you ready to pay it or not? I have learned. I talked about this miracle that happened to me yesterday. I have learned that the people that God cares the most about, He puts through the most pain. That's a tough thing to reconcile yourself with, and most people don't ever get to that place. They just fight it. But if you can get to the understanding of it, you realize that you're going through this because you're being molded into somebody that has the potential to be really useful to Him. I wasn't religious at all when I went to Narcotics Anonymous. I had no religion. I was absolute avowed scientific atheist. I didn't believe in any of this stuff. And when they would talk about a higher power, I said, I don't believe in a higher power. And my sponsor said, you ever been to the ocean? I said, yeah, I grew up in the ocean. I'm Bermuda and Florida. We're here in Florida. Yes, I've been to the ocean, Ian. And that was his name, by the way. He said, you ever seen a wave that you couldn't resist? You ever seen a wave big enough to knock you over? I said, yes. I said, well, so let that be your higher power for the time being, okay? You just have to understand there are things more powerful than you, including this affliction. And if you don't believe in God, that's fine. But there are things more powerful than you, Bill Whittle. You understand that, right? And I said, I don't really know if I do believe that, actually, come to think of it. And I used to have a lot of fun with those guys, and they loved me because I was funny. And I was funny because I was happy. I got a reputation among that group of people. I got my reputation because after 4 weeks or something, I raised my hand, and everybody gets to talk. Everybody gets to talk and share what they want to share, talk about what they want to talk about or not, as the case may be. And after about 4 weeks, I raised my hand. And I'd been really dumping a lot of really emotional stuff and really making some progress. And I raised my hand and I said with a straight face, I said, does Narcotics Anonymous is there like a magazine or something that they have? Is there like a newsletter or a magazine? And they said, no, not really. Why do you ask? I said, because I want to have my picture taken and put on the cover of that magazine for having the world land speed record for recovery. That's what I want. And everybody laughed. And I laughed too. And then there were times when I wasn't laughing. During the holidays, Christmas holidays, I went to 3 meetings a day. Pretty much from the time of Thanksgiving on, I was doing 2. But as we started to get into Christmas, day before Christmas, all the way through the end of New Year's, I was going 3 times a day. Because the idea of being by myself in the holidays, again, was just horrific. So you've got friends who are there, and you have friends in high places, and you have, whether you know it or not, you have the very powerful friend in the very highest place, and that friend is more than willing to help you out of this. But what he needs to see is he needs to see that you want it, because if you don't want it enough, it's not going to work. And so it's not like you're getting ripped off. It's not like he doesn't care. It's just unless you want it enough, it's not going to work. And when you want it enough, you'll make a call, and then you'll be surrounded by people who are exactly like you. Like I said, they were by far the brightest, funniest people I'd ever met before. Really, really brilliant, funny people. I knew this girl who was taking her dog's pain medication, and she would have to admit that. And all kinds of things. Just, okay, you admitted it, and now and now it's out, and we still like you. So anyway, there's obviously some reason why this didn't turn into the firewall topics thing. It's coming up on 8. I have a letter of I have a letter of gratitude to write that is going to take all of my ability. It's going to take all of my writing skill to make this person appreciate just how much they've done for me. And yeah, hey, look at it this way. Steve Darrow, our friend Steve Darrow, points out today's D-Day. Ian and Martin, it's D-Day. It's the day, June 6th. It's the day that we decided to go ashore and stop those Nazi bastards who were killing everybody. And D-Day's easy to remember. D-Day is easy to remember. And if you make a decision to do this, both of you guys, D-Day, JC2K says D-Day is do it day. Love it. But then your anniversary will be D-Day, and every time D-Day comes around, you'll remember D-Day was the day I started getting better. D-Day was the day that that requires courage. It requires courage. Somebody said to me once, they said, if you ask somebody what is the hardest thing in the world to do, you get a bunch of different answers, and some people would say, well, becoming a brain surgeon, or making $1 billion, or any number of things. If you asked anybody what the hardest thing in the world to do, you'd get as many different answers as you had people. And he said, but that's not the hardest thing in the world. The hardest thing in the world to do is the same for everybody. It is the hardest thing in the world to do is to change yourself. Change yourself. That is the hardest thing in the world to do, and that's what faces you, and you shouldn't gloss over it. And I'm not glossing it over it for you either. I'm not telling you this thing's going to be a cakewalk or it's going to be a bed of roses. None of it's going to be horrible and painful, but it is going to start working immediately, and you will feel better, and there will come a time, as it came with me, where you will have a beautiful house and an incredible wife and all of the things that you deserve, but you won't get those things if you keep making the same mistakes, and you'll keep making the same mistakes until you decide to get some help on this, and that is just the fundamental truth of it, like it or not. I've earned another carrot. Somebody said I should talk about D-Day. I feel like I just did on that firewall in color. I don't feel like talking about that for some reason. I think this stuff is more important. And now I am going to wrap this show up. I'm going to write a letter to somebody who I've never met before or spoken to. And I am going to tell them in extremely personal detail how much what they have done has meant to me. And you know, I always, this does have something to do with D-Day. I have a very strong aversion to defining down heroism. This teacher came in after school for 9 years and taught tutoring classes in mathematics. He's a hero. Well, okay, he's certainly somebody worthy of genuine praise, but hero is a little different. Same thing for courage. I have a real problem with talking down courage. When I say talking it down, I'm saying, well, that's a really courageous thing. Like, it's very courageous. He came out as a gay actor. What incredible courage it took. There's a big difference between that kind of courage and the physical courage of running into machine gun fire and seeing your friends explode. So I don't mean to equate these two. I just don't know what other word for it there is. When I write this letter to this person, I'm going to do what I do on this show. I'm going to be absolutely honest, and I'm going to just drop all my defenses and just tell the truth. And that actually does require a form of emotional courage. It's not the same as battlefield courage, but it's courage. It's a different kind of courage. And And courage is the primary virtue. It's the one virtue that all of the other virtues depend on. It's the primary virtue is courage. And courage is not, as everybody says 100 times, absolutely true. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action in the face of tremendous fear. And both of the people we talked about today both have medical fears and issues, and what's keeping you from addressing them is your pride. And having the courage to throw your pride away, which is your primary shield and defense, that's actual courage. When you have the courage to simply drop the shield of pride and just stand there and say, okay, do your worst. You got to find it, and you will find it. I have no doubt you'll find it. And if you don't find it between now and next week, then we'll give you another shot of booster shot of support. Nobody gets through this by themselves, and nobody cures themselves by themselves. Nobody gets healthy by themselves. It's not a commune, and it's not our responsibility. It's not our responsibility. We're not coerced into helping you. We're not having money taken out of our pocket at gunpoint so that the government can spend money on making you feel better and be delivered by some politician. We're just people who've all had our own problems and our own hardships, and we know what it's like, and we didn't like it, and people have come and rescued us, or we wanted them to, and now we have a chance to do it for somebody else. So just find the courage to put aside your pride and go and talk to somebody and tell them you need treatment for depression. You can tell them I sent you if you want. That ought to throw a lot of weight. Serious as I can be. I mean, this is what this whole episode turned out to be. Tell them I sent you. I've had all these problems and more. Tell them I sent you. And both of you, and for those of you who may be watching either on YouTube later after the recording, or other people are watching it now live, if you're going through some of this and you didn't say anything, that's fine. I understand that. I also, this applies to you too. So, there you go. It's 10 to 8. We've been going a little hour and 45 minutes or so. And while I would like to get to the questions, I don't feel like I could start on them and answer one or two of them with any degree of quality. Not that that's ever been an issue before. So what I will do is I will try and set that topic for next week. And I'll look at the topic suggestions now. And I suspect... oh, good for you, man. I'm not going to read that out loud. I'm just not. But God damn, good for you, pal. That's the attitude. You go out there, you just keep that in mind. And don't, you should write that down. I'm serious as I can be. What you just wrote there, Ian, you should write it down on a piece of paper, and you need to keep it in your pocket. And when you start feeling bad again, you read that piece of paper to yourself, and you remember that I told you that that is what's going to save you. That's the spirit. That's the spirit. Frickin' beautiful, man. Proud of that. That's just exactly, precisely what you need. I'm just as happy as I can be. It make me happier than anything I've seen in a long, long time. That's exactly, precisely the attitude. And write it down verbatim. Do it right now. Write it down. Put it in your pocket. And the day's going to come when you have your beautiful wife and your lovely family and your nice house and your good job, and you can take that piece of paper and you can put it in a frame and you can put it on your mantelpiece and you can keep it there for the rest of your life to remind you of where you came from and how far you've come. Do it. Write it down. Put it on a piece of paper. Don't lose the paper. I always feel if I do less than an hour, I'm somehow just ripping you guys off, and God knows that's my intention. It's my business plan. But there's one other thing I guess I'll add to this, since he wrote that incredible thing. The power of symbols, and when I say symbols, I mean something you can actually physically touch, is really important. Really important. If you get into one of the 12-step programs, and if you're suffering from depression, then what you're going to find is that all of the drunks and the potheads and the crackheads and all the rest of those people are are suffering from the same problem you are. They're suffering from depression and lack of self-esteem and loneliness, and they're just using drink or drugs to medicate themselves. But the reason that these 12-step programs work identically for alcoholics and gamblers and drug addicts is because it's the same disease, just different symptoms, different means of coping with it. But if you do find yourself in one of those meetings, and I cannot recommend it highly enough, you'll probably do what I do, which is sit there and listen and not say too much. And then at the end of every meeting, they go through a ritual. And it's a very important ritual. And they start off by saying, anybody want to, come up and get a white chip and start with this program, make a commitment to start to it? And I sat there for at least 5 meetings, at least that long. And finally, I talked a bit, but I wasn't going to go up there and get this thing. But finally, I just said, yeah, okay. And I stood up, and everybody applauded, and I went up there, and they gave me a white poker chip. It was just a cheap white plastic poker chip. And it had NA stamped on it, but it wouldn't have mattered because it was just a symbol. It's a white poker chip, and and you'll hear alcoholics and addicts sometimes talking about their chips. And then, so that was a white chip. And then I don't remember the colors. I feel bad about not remembering the colors. If you did a month, you got a different colored chip. If you did 6 months, you got another colored chip. If you did a year, you got another colored chip. And I drilled a hole in those chips, and I put them on my key ring. And I had about 6 of them when I left. And that physical presence of that chip was something that gave me an awful lot of strength and gave me an awful lot of courage when I needed it. And there are a lot of people out there to help you, but the hard work you're going to have to do mostly by yourself. And I have no doubt that you'll do it, especially since that last response. It's just golden, man. You're going to be fine. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Dr. Bill's Psycho Evaluation 101, where we bring the worst cases of madness and insanity to the forefront and attempt to find some sort of cure, up to and certainly including electroshock, lobotomy, whatever it takes to get people back on the straight and level of conservative thought, which is, of course, nothing but strict rote obedience to authority and totalitarian fear of those people in power. So I'm always happy to add new people to the collective. Anyway, that'll do it. My Aurora Republic fans, I haven't been there. Friends, rather, I meant to say friends, believe me, probably a Freudian slip. But I haven't been playing the game for 2 weeks because that last patch was just miserable. But there's a new patch out, so you'll be seeing me back out there again. And we'll hang out and we'll do some more fun things on alien planets. And you don't get to pick your family, but you do get to pick your friends. All right. Well, that'll do it. Thanks for joining us, and it's great to see all of you, and it's great to get the support that I get from all of you, and this is certainly a two-way street. So hang in there, all of you people out there. You're not alone. You're really not. People really care about you, and I'm one of them. And we'll come back next week and we'll talk about something fluffy and ridiculous, and unless we don't, in which case we'll talk about something more serious. But either way, we'll be back. And it's just a real honor and a privilege to be around people like you. Yeah, we're real proud of you, and we're proud of you too, Martin, and all the rest of you out there who may be hearing this. Whoever you are, if it talked to you, and I'm using somebody else's name, that's just because it's coming in live. It applies to everybody equally, and believe me, we've been there. If you're watching this on YouTube and it feels like it's done you some good, then we certainly welcome you to watch the show live, which is on Twitch. We put it up on my Facebook page. We try and do it every Thursday. I miss every now and then, but I try to get it done. So we'd love to have you come in and meet the fams. All right, guys, that'll do it. I feel really good. I can't tell you how good I feel, And while I know this may sound extremely maudlin and cheesy, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Martin, and all the rest of you who've mentioned something. This burden of gratitude is not really a burden. Actually, it's the opposite of a burden. But it's nice for me to be able to pay some bills that I needed to pay, and that's an opportunity that I'm very thankful for. So you'll get to be on the other side of this, I have no doubt. Okay, well, that'll do it. I'm going to hit the stop streaming button now, and the stop recording button, and we will see you all next week right here on your very own Stratosphere Lounge Show. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. The world is full of lunatics. They're just barking mad. They're just barking mad. Why me? What is it about me that attracts loonies like this? I'm going to go make another sacrifice to Satan. It worked so well before. I'm really going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a free-range chicken or something quality, not some, not some, bullshit frog or something like that. I'm going to do it right. And then I'm going to get smashed because another evening like this, and I'm going to slit my wrist for sure. I cannot take it. Oh, crap.